Welcome to Life Matters. I'm your host. We have a very special guest today who's calling in from either Washington, D.C. or New Mexico, which is, New Mexico seems to be on our list these days. And she happens to be the president of the National Right to Life Committee, Carol Tobias. Well, welcome, Carol.
Thank you, Brendan. I'm happy to be on.
Carol, first of all, I wanted to ask you about election night, November 2016. Were your spirits buoyed that evening, and why so?
Oh, that election night was a wonderful night. Throughout the year, we had been going through this whole thinking of, was Hillary Clinton going to be our president for the next 4 years? The year started off with a lot of Republican senators, pro-life senators, being endangered in their reelection options with some good candidates against them. So we were thinking, okay, we could have Hillary Clinton as president, a pro-abortion Democratic Senate. And by the time the night was over, we had a pro-life president, we had a pro-life Senate, a pro-life House. The legislatures and the governors around the country had done a great job on their elections, and it was just a fantastic night. I didn't want to go to bed. I mean, as every state came in and we started seeing those returns come, I couldn't wait for what was going to be coming, and it's been great so far.
What are some of the things that the Trump administration has done to reverse the pro-abortion Obama administration?
What was very encouraging is that on January 23rd, the day after the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, the Trump administration came back and said, we are going to reinstate the Mexico City policy. This is something that was initially put into place by Ronald Reagan back in 1984. It was at a conference in Mexico City, which is how it got this name. But President Reagan had said U.S. tax dollars are not going to be given to organizations that perform or promote abortion in other countries. And it was in effect under Presidents Reagan and both Presidents Bush, 1 and 2, and of course repealed by Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, so that our tax funds were going to agencies that would go into other countries with pro-life cultures in Africa, Central America, South America, and try to overturn their pro-life laws so that abortion would be legal. And it was our tax funds that were, was helping that. So I was thrilled when Donald Trump came back and said, no, we're going to reinstate the Mexico City policy. But he went even further and said, this isn't going to be just so-called family planning funds. We are going to implement this policy in all areas of federal foreign aid. So in May, the Trump administration came out with what they call the Promoting Life in Global Health Assistance Program or policy, which now says that the requirements that our tax dollars cannot be used to perform or promote abortion will be in place in all areas of our assistance overseas. So when it comes to things like HIV and AIDS programs, maternal and child health, even dealing with malaria, anything that our tax dollars are helping in those areas, abortion cannot be a part of it, or organizations that want to promote or perform abortion can't get our tax dollars. And to me, that just said the United States is raising the banner of life throughout the world. We are not going to go into other countries and say, you would be better off if your children were dead, and our tax dollars are going to help that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just really thrilled with that overall program, because that makes a statement worldwide that the United States is going to promote life.
Well, two follow-up questions. One is, does that include sterilization and contraception? Because I know they love to come into countries and hand out condoms everywhere.
No, that is not affected.
So
this is only abortion after the life has begun. So birth control is still available for U.S. funds in all the different programs.
And sterilization? Do you know about
I do not know. I have to say I'm not sure about that one.
Oh, okay. And then also, I know that the Mexico City policy, I think it's a budgetary item and has to be voted in each year. Are they trying to make that law now so that it becomes permanent law so they don't have to vote on it every year?
Well, that would certainly be a great plan, but and quite frankly, we've got Republican control, pro-life Republican control in the Senate, but we still do not have the 60 votes to pass a lot of pro-life measures. So we can certainly stop anything, but pro-abortion Democrats in the Senate, I do not believe would let anything like that actually happen. So at this point, the Mexico City policy, which is an executive branch policy, although using funds from Congress, funded by Congress, we need to rely on the president for that.
And what about legislation regarding protecting pain-capable unborn babies from abortion? What's the status of that?
Well, unfortunately, we saw it passed in the House a couple of years ago, but the Senate didn't get anywhere on it. They didn't pass it. And I think we will see that in this congressional session as well. The House is overwhelmingly pro-life, and they earlier this year did pass a bill, the No U.S. Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act, which would cut across every level of government and all funding that no tax dollars could be used to pay for abortion. So we got that passed in the House, but I don't see it going anywhere in the Senate just because, again, the pro-abortion Democrats have enough votes to stop it. And I think that will be the same situation with the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, that I do expect a vote in the House sometime in this session, but I don't see it going anywhere in the Senate.
And what about, there's a great push right now to, Planned Parenthood's been getting roughly $500 million a year as a nonprofit 501c3. What's the status of that? Is there hope that they may lose their funding?
There is hope. Democrats in the Senate, again, would be able to stop anything legislatively, but there is a measure that some of your listeners have probably been reading about or heard about, where it's the Budget Reconciliation Act, where Congress has one chance each year to affect the budget, and it's a measure that is set up so that you only need a majority of the Senate instead of a filibuster-proof 60 votes in the Senate. So the House passed that, the defunding of Planned Parenthood, as part of the Obamacare repeal and replace bill last month. That is currently sitting in the Senate, and they are working on that right now. So if we can get that through the budget reconciliation process, defunding Planned Parenthood would be a part of it. Mm-hmm. Now, I thought it was great earlier this year when this first kind of started coming up that the House was going to be looking at this measure, and of course Planned Parenthood and their allies were objecting to the provision, that they would not get tax funding for other services than abortion that they are performing. And President Trump just said, look, you can have your tax funding, just stop doing abortions. Except they didn't like that, so they didn't take him up on that offer.
Right. They showed their true colors that
Yes.
They do abortions rather than what they try to say they do mammograms, which isn't. That's been disputed and refuted, and other health services, but.
They do not do mammograms. Their breast cancer screenings have gone down. Pap smear tests have gone down. And even some of their contraceptive dispersal has gone down. The only service they are providing that is going up is abortions and the number of unborn children that they kill every year.
Mm-hmm. So they're taking an increasing percentage of the total abortions done in this country, which is about, 1 million a year right now? Or
actually, the last year that we really have good figures for is 2014. Which just a little over 926,000 abortions. So being below 1 million abortions per year is just amazing. We haven't seen those numbers since the early 1970s. But yes, Planned Parenthood's numbers and their percentage of the abortions that they are performing is going up to where they're now doing at least a third of all abortions in the country.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask you about Bill and Hillary Clinton. When they came into office, they went after a French firm that owned a German firm, bought the French firm on RU 486, and they opened up a place in the Cayman Islands, and they had it made over in China. But they're called medical abortions or chemical abortions. And I've had Dr. Donna Harrison on and Congressman Chris Smith on a separate show, kind of putting the pieces together, the history and what actually happened in Congress. Do you see, and because chemical abortions are becoming a growing percentage of total abortions, in other words, surgical abortions are becoming less a percentage, do you see that, is there any way that a pro-life presidency could overturn what the Clintons ramrodded through the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration? Where do you see that, and is there any hope that we can hold out that maybe we could just invalidate medical abortions?
I would love to see that happen, but I really don't think it will. Chemical abortions are now about 30% of all abortions being performed in the United States. And instead of pulling back or trying to make availability of this chemical abortion harder to come by, the FDA last year actually came out and loosened their regulations, saying that, before you were not supposed to be doing a chemical abortion after 7 weeks of pregnancy. The FDA has now said you can do it up to 10 weeks of pregnancy. They are saying you don't have to take as much of the first pill, the misoprostol, which, quite frankly, eats up the progesterone in the uterus or keeps it from growing, so that then the unborn child starves to death because the progesterone is where the baby is getting her nourishment. So they're saying you don't even have to take as much of that. The second pill that you would take is the misoprostol that would expel the dead baby from the uterus. And they're saying, well, maybe it's okay, just do that one instead. So they started loosening the restrictions on this procedure to make it easier for women to get it. Now others besides non-physicians can prescribe the pill. And I think it's so far down the road that to go back and say, look, 20 years ago, this was brought in a way that maybe wasn't completely, legal, or maybe a few corners were cut off. I don't see that that's going to be a good argument. What we need to just keep talking about is that with every abortion, whether it's a surgical abortion or a chemical abortion, an unborn baby dies. That is a human being whose life is being extinguished. And we need to just keep promoting life being worthy of respect and protection, that every life has dignity.
Now, the last time you were on this show, you were mentioning one of your real concerns was that telemedicine by telephone was growing. Is that still growing around the country?
Well, fortunately, we've had some states pass laws to say that you can't do it, that if you're going to perform an abortion on a woman, you have to at least be in the same room with her. What we had seen was some place like Planned Parenthood in Iowa setting up a little office of an abortionist, a so-called doctor, could talk to a woman 100 miles away in another city, and he would just push a button on his computer and a drawer would open in the room where she is sitting, and he would have her take that pill, but he was just talking to her over the phone even though he had never met her. So that is a way for abortion facilities to get abortion to places that maybe can't keep a full clinic operating. Mm-hmm. But like I said, some states have actually prevented that by state law, and I hope to see many more of them doing it. I had Dr. Levatino on. I think you may know him. Yes, I do.
And he mentioned that with these types of abortions going on, that one really dangerous thing is if a woman has an ectopic pregnancy and she's not seeing a doctor at all, she's going to die, or there's going to be serious blood loss. Let me put it that way.
Well, the chemical abortion is not easy. In fact, a couple of years ago, there was an article written by a woman who said, I've had the surgical abortion and I've had the, they call them medical abortions. And she talked about how the medical abortion was so much worse because the pain was so much greater. But we do know that at least 14 women have died in this country from, after taking the chemical abortion. And there are a lot of problems. There can be, the ectopic pregnancy where, the baby isn't in the uterus, so, you can't expel the dead baby because, the baby isn't there. It keeps growing and ruptures, that fallopian tube. But for women who actually do complete the process, there are still some other problems. There can be severe hemorrhaging to where they would need blood transfusions, endometriosis, pelvic infections. There can be a lot of problems, and the woman may not be expecting it. She hasn't, she's not really in the care of a doctor. So when they go to the emergency room because they're not feeling well, the doctors there don't know what the problem is. So it's certainly, this procedure kills the baby, but it's not that pleasant for the woman, and it's not an easy solution. Just swallow a pill, and my pregnancy is gone.
Right, and you're all alone while it's happening too. So, I would
and
imagine
again,
the guilt.
We've heard the stories of women who say that after taking this, they were at home, they went to the bathroom, and they happened to see the tiny body of their little one. Maybe they'll be in the bathtub, and again the body will be expelled, and it's not what they were expecting. So it can have some, I think, psychological and emotional trauma as well.
Mm-hmm. And now, as far as I've had Dr. Dave Weldon on this show, and he had drafted something called the Weldon Amendment, and we were chatting about how California, they were ignoring it under the Obama administration and basically forcing medical professionals to be involved with abortions. Is the Weldon Amendment going to be enforced again, or is there a way to stop California from doing what it's doing currently, so that doctors' rights, nurses, medical institutions, insurance companies of medical institutions have conscious rights? Is there something we can do to and make it a stronger thing so that the conscience rights of doctors are not violated, and other medical professionals?
I think we will see that happen. That's on the list, I'm sure. You've got the Justice Department and Department of Health and Human Services that are being asked by members of Congress to enforce the Weldon language in states like California. One of my concerns is, in California, they are forcing pregnancy centers to tell women where they can go to get an abortion and that the state may pay for the abortion. So California really has gone off the deep end in not just defending and protecting abortion, but promoting it and pushing it and forcing people with moral and religious objections to be, promoting and advocating for abortion. But I think we will see something coming from the federal government. But, right now with the new administration, they've got a lot of things on their plate, and I think they're just kind of trying to sort through and prioritize.
Now, I've been to the National Right to Life Convention many times over recent years, and I know Dr. Osteen does a lot of poll taking on the pro-life issue, and I noticed over the years the polling company was one of the companies they used, and I ended up having Kellyanne Conway on my show in the midterm election of 2014, and was delighted. I imagine, were you delighted to see Kellyanne Conway being chosen by Trump as a campaign manager?
Oh, absolutely. we knew that he was going to be getting sound advice. Kellyanne knows where the American public is on this issue. And, quite frankly, even if the American public was totally in favor of abortion and tax funding of abortion, that wouldn't have changed her position. And, it may have given her some information of, how to, coach the candidate to speak about the issue. But it was just, having Donald Trump surrounded by so many wonderful pro-life people, Kellyanne Conway, and now, of course, Vice President Mike Pence. He's got a fantastic administration, with Jeff Sessions as Attorney General, Tom Price as Secretary of Health and Human Services. I mean, he's just so many wonderful people around him that it was just, for me, seeing all those wonderful appointments was, again, just more confirmation that Donald Trump is going to be looking out for the babies. He sees pro-lifers as his allies.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know there's coming up shortly this year is a national convention in Milwaukee, and I see you have some people like David Daleiden. How is he faring with all of his efforts? I know that the opposition is trying to sue him everywhere they possibly can to slow him down.
They certainly are doing what they can. I'm assuming everybody listening here or watching knows that David Daleiden was the one responsible for the undercover videos of Planned Parenthood that started coming out about 2 years ago. But yes, he is going to be at our convention in Milwaukee. It's June 29th, 30th, and July 1st. He is under a lot of pressure from various, state agencies like California, a lot of courts trying to get him to keep those videos quiet. And he does actually have a court hearing in California in June. So he is going to be out there before he comes to Milwaukee. So we'll get the latest news as to the kind of persecution that he is undergoing through all of this. But we'd love to have people in Milwaukee at the convention, as I said, June 29th, 30th, and July 1st. Our website is nrlconvention.com. There's information on there about the hotel, the schedule, registration. I think it's going to be a great year.
Mm-hmm. One other question I had for you was the Supreme Court nomination and lower court nominations. Are many or any of these people pro-life? And if there is a retirement coming up during the Trump's first 4 years, whom would you like to see as the next Supreme Court justice?
Oh, there are so many good possibilities out there. I think Justice Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court will be one of the best, longest-lasting legacies of the Trump presidency. Gorsuch is just absolutely fantastic. He's intelligent. He's likable. I like the fact that he wrote a book several years ago against assisted suicide, and in that book he stated that human life is valuable, and intentional taking of that human life by private persons, he distinguished that from the government, is always wrong. So I think he has his priorities in the right order. So we've got that spot filled. The Trump administration is currently looking at all of the vacancies on the federal appellate courts, the Court of Appeals system. There are a lot of federal judges, vacancies that need to be filled, and they're going to do their best to fill them with men and women who understand our Constitution and, that judges are not supposed to be legislating from the bench. So, again, the Supreme Court and all the federal judges, I think we could see a huge turn in a lot of decisions in the coming years because we will have good judges on the bench. As to whether or not there will be a retirement, there are certainly a couple people on the Supreme Court that I would like to encourage that they do retire, but they probably aren't going to listen to me. But there are so many great judges already on the bench. Donald Trump put forward 2 different lists of people that he would say are qualified, and I will certainly be happy with anybody on those lists. I just think that the court system could be the best reason to have made sure that Donald Trump was president and Hillary Clinton was not.
Yes, definitely indeed. And one other question I have for you. I was surprised to find out, while the Federal Society believes in the Constitution written as is, and you shouldn't make it a living document, they're not necessarily pro-life, and I'm not sure about the Heritage Foundation, but I thought the list was put forth by the Heritage Foundation and the Federal Society that Donald Trump initially bandied about at his campaign. Is that the case, or what do you know about that?
It was, but I think a lot of the thinking, the philosophy of the judges would be the same. Even if someone putting that list together didn't have abortion as a high priority, if they are looking for a judge who understands the Constitution, understands that taking an innocent human life with federal sanction is not allowed, it doesn't matter what they think of abortion. If you've got someone who understands the Constitution and is willing to defend it, I'm not concerned about that as much. The lists have been made public. A lot of good pro-life people have gone through the lists, and there aren't any that are jumping up with red flags saying this person would not be qualified and pro-lifers should be opposing him or her.
I know that back many years ago now, Sandra Day O'Connor, who came out of Arizona, and I believe it was the Arizona Right to Life person, Gertzner, was that her name?
Carolyn Gerster. She was president of National Right to Life at the time.
Yeah, she objected to Sandra Day O'Connor being nominated by Reagan, and Reagan didn't listen to her, and she turned out to be a pro-abortion judge.
Yes, she did.
So, well, Carol, our time has come to an end. It went by so quickly, and I have plenty of other questions. Maybe I can ask you a few at the National Right to Life Convention if you're not too busy.
Oh, we can certainly make time.
Okay, Carol, thank you so much for being on our show today.
You're welcome.
And we hope you found today's show to be unique, informative, content-rich, truthful, and thought-provoking. Thanks for watching. I'm Brendan O'Connell, your friend for life.